Echo. I really wanted to like Echo. To be fair, you know, I liked 90% of Echo, but I have some words for you. So friends, I finally watched all of Echo. I binged it. I watched every episode. I honestly devoured it. I was really happy that I got to sit and watch it all in one go, because I do feel like that was the best way to consume it for me. I don't know if you spaced it out. If you did, if that's your experience, let me know. Also, let me know what you thought of the show down in the comments below. I'm very excited to hear what other people thought, what you liked, what you didn't like. Let's talk about that. Before we jump into it, I want to tell you a little bit about the story and what this series is about. I mean, obviously it's about Echo, because that's the name of the series. So yes, but also what else do we got going on here? Let's talk about that. So Echo. Here we go. Maya Lopez, after taking out Kingpin, basically returns home to Tamaha with a plot to take down the remainder of Fisk's armory, trying to dethrone his right-hand man Zane by basically blowing up the armory. And in doing this, she's forced to confront the family that she hasn't seen in like 20 years. And who, in many ways, she actually kind of feels abandoned her after her father's death. And they're also forced to face the trouble that travels with Maya, as well as kind of struggling to reconnect with her and figure out how to do that and make her understand that despite her very long absence from the community, that she will always be a part of their family and will always have a place there, and that it's, you know, where they feel that she belongs. Ultimately, Maya basically learns that Wilson Fisk is alive, surprise, and so she's forced to choose between her family in New York with Kingpin and her family in Tamaha that she initially left behind after her mother tragically passed. As she uncovers more about her mysterious, supernatural, and spiritual sort of connection to her people and her family's legacy, she ultimately chooses her Choctaw family and embraces the echoing out of her legacy. And this allows her to accept her newfound powers, becoming the hero, literally Echo, getting also a cool suit, and facing Fisk in an ultimate showdown that leaves him possibly changed and emotionally reeling, I would say. Also, like, kind of physically, but mostly emotionally. To be real with you, this show is very emotional, which I liked about it, but we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna start off with some of the things that I really liked, and then we're gonna kind of get into some of the stuff that I felt was a little bit weaker, basically the 10% of the show that I wasn't as here for. But there is a lot in this show to love, so let's talk about that first. So, Alaqua Cox, let's talk about her. Wow, she is a force. She is a powerhouse. She really knocks it out of the park in this series, and I'm so happy that she got to have a series, because she really owns it. And I think she is really the driving force of the show, which is great. That's what you want for a lead character. I think there's also something really cool to be said about the way that storytelling is done in this series, and the idea of the power of almost speech through action, and also like nonverbal communication. So the idea that we have people that are signing throughout the series, and how intense and emotional that can be, and how you get wrapped up in these conversations that are told through captions and sign language. I'm always someone that watches shows with captions, so for me, it was very easy to just like jump into that, but just seeing the way that they interpreted, the way Echo communicates, and the way that she experiences the world around her, and how this story is really sort of placed in a storytelling perspective from Echo's perspective, and everything sort of catered to her, which was also discussed in the interviews with the director, and she basically said that that was something they really wanted to focus on. I really think that they nailed that, and I think Cox as Maya really just brings it. She really brings it. It's really great. Honestly, all the actors are great, especially Cheske Spencer, who plays her Uncle Henry in the show. Wow, he is a force. Everyone in this is so good though. Like, honestly, I think the best part of it is the actors, and that kind of leads into my next thing, which is the family stuff in the show is, I think, the strongest part of it. the emotional connection between all of these characters, whether it's Maya with her like sort of adoptive father Wilson Fisk, or whether it's Maya and her grandmother Chula, or whether it's Maya and, you know, Henry. It's just, all of these scenes are amazing. Or even, you know, seeing the emotional connections between these other characters not around Maya. So seeing like Scully and Chula, who are her grandparents, and their interactions with each other. It's powerful stuff. It really is some of the stuff that I enjoyed the most, was watching those scenes. And of course the action. The action, of course, they nailed it. It's pretty fire, I gotta say. The sequence that we get initially in sort of the episode 1, which I would say is kind of the exposition episode. It's really recapping you on Maya's like history up to this point, if you haven't seen Hawkeye. But then it's also providing some new stuff. So for those of us that watched Hawkeye, it's also adding in the stuff that we didn't see of Maya's life. And sort of when her father passes, how she starts working for her Uncle Fisk, and there's this really amazing fight sequence that we get in basically like a warehouse. We get to see Maya tangle with Daredevil. It's also basically implied that she is at like, maybe not quite like the level to beat Daredevil, but like that she's very like kind of even keel with him in her fighting style, which I really loved, because Echo in the comics is very much like a physical force, even with someone as powerful as Daredevil. So I really liked that they kind of gave us that little bit of like hint at the power ranking there. I thought that was pretty cool. The action as well is also amazing, because once again, it is very much told and shown the story of what's happening in a lot of these action sequences, including the one that we get in the roller rink, which I also loved. I also love that roller rink in general. Just the design of that place is so cool. Both of those have elements of just showing what the fight really feels like from Maya's perspective, how she experiences it in terms of being deaf. The sound design in this show in general is fantastic. The idea of playing with sound and absence of sound, and how Maya even can like use the fact that she's deaf as like an advantage in fights. I love just seeing that, and it's very much gives me some Daredevil vibes, because we also see that sometimes with Daredevil as well in stories and in the comics. And I just love when people play with this idea of like, you know, Matt, he can see in the dark. He doesn't need light to see, right? So because he's blind, that's not how he sees. He sees basically like kind of sonar. So when he can just be like, well, now we're in the dark and I'm good and you're not good. And Maya being like, I'm going to crank the volume because it's going to drive you crazy and make it hard for you to focus. But for me, I don't even hear it. Like, it's just so cool. I just really love it. However, not all of the action is amazing. Well, okay, all of the action is really amazing, but there was a point where I was like, oh no. And it happens in, I believe it's episode 2, which is during the train sequence, which I liked the whole idea of that scene, and the actual action elements of it are really good, but I got a bit distracted because you can tell that it's blue or green screen, and that it's on a soundstage. And that has nothing to do with the actors' performances, really. Like, especially Alakwa, she's really selling it. And in fact, if she wasn't there, I don't know if I'd believe it as much, because that's how good she is. But you can see it, and it does not look very good. And I know that they can't do, obviously, all of these stunts on a real moving train. Like, that would be insane. That's like Tom Cruise levels of insanity for stunts, okay? If we're talking about actors. And I know that Alakwa actually apparently wanted to perform pretty much all of her stunts, which obviously I don't think she was able to do all of it, but she really did try to do as much of it as possible. So I do appreciate when actors are willing to, like, are excited about like actually putting themselves in those places. I think it really adds to a performance, and I also just think it's good because it's kind of like respecting that can be part of the job. Not that everyone has to do it, but I digress. The thing that I feel like was not helping is that they were doing shots where you didn't need to be on location. Like you didn't need, it wasn't a stunt shot. It's just like a guy peering around a train. Like, why couldn't you do that on a location? Like, you could film some of the shots on a location and mix them in with the blue and green screen so it feels more grounded. But I feel like all of it was blue and green screen, and it's really noticeable. Which kind of leads us into some of the things that I didn't vibe as much for me. So let's talk about character changes. So obviously, I'm familiar with Echo from the comics. I haven't read every single appearance of her or anything like that, so I'll say that. But I have read the original story that she appeared in, and I've read appearances of her here and there, and I've kind of kept up with her a little bit when she was Phoenix and was with the Avengers, and that's a whole thing. I'm glad we didn't go there. I wasn't sure once I started to see, like, powers coming into it and her, like, the hands glowing and all of this. I was like, oh my gosh, is it going to be the Phoenix? Please don't let it be the Phoenix. Not that I don't love Maya as the Phoenix. I mean, I don't love it, but I'm fine with that. I just feel like if we do the Phoenix in the MCU, I still feel like I'd really love for it to at least first be connected to the X-Men in some way before it moves to other people, because it was very much a mutant thing, and now the Phoenix is kind of like an every person thing. I don't hate that idea. I just feel like it would be nice to honor the origin of the Phoenix Force. But they didn't do the Phoenix Force, okay? They didn't do the Phoenix Force. They did something else. It's kind of related to Maya's heritage, which is also interesting because they actually changed the tribe that Maya is connected to. So in this, she's connected to the Choctaw tribe, who they actually kind of had a connection to through one of their writers, I believe, on the show. And they just kind of felt like that was a good place to go. And the Choctaw tribe was willing to work with them, which is really cool. So they went down that path and sort of collaborated with them to create the story, which I think is all really fun and really amazing. But I just feel like for Echo, although she is obviously indigenous and that is a part of her story and her character, it's not the main thing that we really find out about her in the beginning. That's sort of something that's come in like later. Like that's a part of who she is, but for a lot of her life, I don't think she even really fully knows where she belongs, because her dad actually was kind of uprooted. So he's kind of gone around through to different tribes and was kind of like a wanderer. So Maya only kind of learns of even like where she's from and her heritage and her ancestors later in her life. So it's just an interesting idea to start off with that and make that a core part of the character. It's a change from the comics. I don't dislike it, and I understand why I think they wanted to do it, because this is the first character that they're introducing that's like a main character who's indigenous in the MCU, and I think they really wanted to do that right, which I respect. But I just was thinking to myself, like, there's so many amazing characters that we also could have done that with. And I don't want to take away from Echo, because I do love her as a character, and I'm excited that she got her own series, even though I feel like it's a bit short, and I feel like it actually would have been better for some of the storytelling elements if it were a bit longer. But there's Wyatt Wingfoot, there's Talisman, there's Forge, there's some other characters that I feel like could be really cool to bring in before, especially Wyatt Wingfoot. I really love Wyatt Wingfoot, and I feel like he doesn't get enough love, and I'd love to see him in the show. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see him. I don't even know if there's going to be a She-Hulk season 2, but I love Wyatt and Jen together, and so that would be really cool to see on screen for me as someone that's a fan of both those characters and ships them. And I just feel like we'll probably never see him because he's not a superhero. He's like an ally to superheroes. But he has a really cool story, a connection to his tribe that's very close. There's also Talisman, who is the daughter of Shaman from Alpha Flight, and she is also a really intense family drama. But I don't know if maybe because she's Canadian, if that's a thing, that maybe they don't want to do that. I don't know. But these are characters I'd also love to see. And Forge as well, but Forge we might not get into until the X-Men show up, which I understand. So her powers come from her legacy, and her powers are very different from her powers in the comics. So in the comics, her powers are that she has like an eidetic memory. So it's kind of like she sees people performing something physical and she can replicate that. And a lot of people underestimate her because of her disability, but she's actually an incredibly powerful person because of that. In the show, she doesn't have that. And apparently Sydney Freeland, who's the director of the show, said, I read an interview that she did where she literally said those powers were lame, which I guess I can kind of see from the direction that she's approaching it why she would feel that way, but it also connects back to her name, right? Echo. So the reason we call her Echo, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is because she can mimic sort of these things, and so she can echo them. So in the show, what they did was her powers come from her heritage, from her ancestry, and everyone in her line sort of through her matriarchal lineage has these powers that have passed down since like sort of the beginning of their creation story of their tribe, which I don't dislike that. I just feel like it's so different for the character. And then they basically had to figure out, like, how do we tie that in so that it makes sense with her name? So the echoing is in reference to the echo of her ancestors. There's also a lot of stuff with Echo where she can figure stuff out through vibrations. And I don't know if we really got as much into that either in the show. And that was another change that I was kind of just like, okay. I just feel like a lot of the supernatural elements in general also could have been, maybe if the show was a bit longer, they could have fleshed it out a bit. But it felt a little bit like ham-fisted at times. Like, I like the idea of her having powers that are connected to, like, her heritage and her legacy, and I think that's a cool idea. But it felt very like, and then her mom has healing powers, so she has healing powers. And then she is in a rough spot fighting Fisk and his goons, so she, like, activates her powers, and it activates the powers in her cousin and her grandma, and all of a sudden they have powers. And now, like, they can punch people really well, because I guess she has, like, kind of warrior powers, or through her lineage she has those. It felt a little muddled, and it felt a little like a bit of a wash. The emotional stuff is really deep, but the supernatural stuff feels a little bit surface, I guess, in comparison for me. So yeah. And then there was the ending, and the ending is really where, for me, the wheels kind of fell off. The final showdown is a fight between Echo and Kingpin. And Echo, after finding out, well, she kind of always knew her mom had healing powers, but in finding out, like, her powers come through her heritage, uses her mom's healing powers to basically, like, try to heal Fisk's trauma, which I think would be better if we built a little bit more, I don't know, like, their connection. Like, Fisk and Maya still have a great connection throughout the show, but I just feel like a lot of it gets to a point where it feels like everything's leading into everything, and then we get to the end. It doesn't feel rushed because the moments let themselves sit. So the scenes are well executed. But just in terms of the plot, there's just a lot going on quickly. And it means that stuff just feels like it's just happening. Like, Fisk runs into her grandmother and then kidnaps her. And I don't think it was planned. I think it just happens. So that feels convenient. The idea that Maya, when she's fighting Fisk because he's, like, so powerful, she decides, like, physically powerful, she decides, and I think she knows the best way to defeat him is basically to try to heal him, because a lot of where Fisk is broken is, like, in his own trauma that she learns about and his stuff with his family. But it's, like, weird to heal someone, to, like, it's just weird. It's just weird for her to be like, I'm a healer now. I was like, but Maya's always a fighter. I don't know. That for me was strange. And then he basically just runs away because he's like, what did you do to me? I can't deal with this. So I'm curious to see where his story goes next and see where we take that. Obviously, I love Vincent D'Onofrio as Fisk, and he was amazing in this. And I think they really did nail the characterization of Fisk. I will say that. They obviously understood that the most powerful part of him is him as a manipulator, and I love that. It's not just his physical presence, it's really actually his intelligence and his manipulation. So yeah, bit of a mixed bag, but overall I really did like it. I would recommend that you see it, and I think my rating for this show, let's go with Maya's slingshots that she loves, whether it be an impromptu roller skate slingshot that she made in like a minute, or a slingshot that she used as a child. Out of slingshots, I want to give this, I'm gonna say like a 7 out of 10. Like, it's very strong overall, but it just, the ending was a little rough. Like 7 or 7.5, really, if I'm being real. Yeah, it was good. I hope that if you watched it, that you also enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, friends, stay nerdy. Bye!